All right, not hearing anything, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, like I said, this training today is going to be the classroom portion of kind of our take on the first 5 minutes. If anybody's taken a first 5 minutes class in the past, it's really officer based. It's really kind of more on, that initial size up, initial actions, tactical priorities, things like that. Today, I really want to focus more on, as a department, as that first arriving engine, what roles does an FAO have to do? What roles does a firefighter have to do? And then what roles do the company officers need to do to really set up a successful scene is really what we want to shoot for. So make sure I got this working right and sharing the right screen. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll kind of get going here. And again, like I said, really the focus is on how we can make sure that we're all going to be ready, prepped, prepared to jump in and make a scene successful. So this is really the first 5 minutes, what roles, responsibilities, and things need to be done to make everything successful on our scene. So for the first 5 minutes, the topics we're going to cover is what do we need to be prepared for before the call? And I think that's kind of a lost thing that we don't really talk about a whole lot. What do we need to do to prepare ourselves and to kind of do that mental checklist to make sure that we're ready to go? Then we're going to talk about some of the things that as we're responding to the call, what should we be doing, thinking, preparing ourselves for, getting ourselves prepped for actual on-scene success. Then we're going to kind of dive into some of the roles that firefighters need to play and be good at when they're on scene. Some of the roles and responsibilities that FAOs are going to have to make it a successful scene. And then really for company officers, what responsibilities do we have? What are the things that we need to be ready for and do a good job of managing to make sure that the scene goes well? And then after that, we're just going to kind of talk about how do we set the scene up for success. And then at the end of the day, after those first 5 minutes are done, if we've done everything right as that first arriving engine or ladder, what are we doing to hand that scene over to make it successful to that next crew, to the next arriving company officer or chief that's arriving on scene to assume that second command from that first arriving truck. So before the call, what do we need to have what are we required to be doing and kind of doing that mental checklist before a call even comes in to make sure that we're ready to go? See, I'm going to pick on Vaco because he likes to unmute himself to begin with, so I know it works. So go ahead, Mike. What are some of the things that we need to be ready for?
Well, pretty much anything, but I mean, as the call comes in, what is the call? What are we doing? Where are we going? What equipment do I need? So am I going to, am I going to go do CPR? I need to bring all my gear with me, but do I really need my coat right now? Do I have my N95 mask? Am I ready for, what am I ready for?
Going through that mental process and making sure that I know what's required of me once I get on scene, right?
Yep.
Okay. So here's some of the things that I thought of, and I want anybody else to jump in if they've got something, but operationally, do we know our apparatus, our equipment, the fire ground operations? Do we know our job? Kind of like Mike was saying. If a call comes in, I need to start thinking about what that call is. Am I ready for it? Do I know what needs to happen? And if I don't, it's time to ask some questions and kind of learn that before we get too far along. Training, we need to make sure that we've been training before these calls come in. Are we practicing our skills? And not just the point that we've done them, but to the point that we're actually comfortable doing them, that we're really not going to get them wrong once we're on scene. And that's a big point is we've only got so much training that we have available to us throughout the year, that at least that I can run. But if there's things that we're not getting enough time with, at what point do we take it on ourselves to make sure that we do know maybe how to assemble that airbag setup properly, or how do we use that extrication equipment properly and know the ins and outs of it. So making sure that we're taking our time to really practice those skills. Before a call comes in, I need to be physically ready to go, right? If it's a 104-degree day and I didn't hydrate, it's probably not going to be a good scene for me, is it? I'm not going to be successful on that scene, and I'm going to potentially put myself and possibly even others at risk on that scene. Mentally, I mean, we've all had those days where mentally we're just not in it. Maybe we're thinking about other things. Maybe we've had a big project that we're working on, or anything else that we can be a part of. Or maybe we're just letting adrenaline kind of run our thought process. And that's why we really need to slow down and think and make sure that my head is in the game. If my head's not in the game, I'm not going to be able to make good decisions. I'm not going to be able to recall my training. I'm not going to be able to know my equipment and know my roles on that scene. And then also emotionally, we all, have things that we go through in life. Last night it was brought up. We all have, family lives outside of this, and sometimes that can be an additional stressor. Maybe something's not going good there. And before a call even comes in, I might have something that I'm focused on there. And if a call comes in and I just try to jump and go to that call, I might not be emotionally dialed into what I need to be taken care of on scene because I'm still focused on that. So sometimes we need to maybe stay out of that call and focus on what's going on in our life, because that's a little bit more important if I'm not going to be dialed in on scene. Does anybody else have anything that they can think of that we need to be kind of thinking about and preparing ourselves before a call even comes in? All right, keep going. Feel free to jump in. Hey, go ahead.
Know your crew. Know your limitations of your crew, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and plan around it.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think a lot of that comes in that operationally and the training parts too. If we're working with our crews and talking about operations and how things work and how we're going to work together, and we practice our skills together, if we're looking around the room and I'm told I got to do a left-hand search with everyone that I'm in the room with right now, is everyone going to be on the same page with how that search looks? But if you've trained it and you've done with that crew before, it's going to be flowing very nice and easy because we've done it. We know how that works together, and we know how to work together. So that's a great point. Working with your crew, knowing the limitations, knowing whatever everyone's going through and what they're good at and what they need help with. At any point during this, go ahead, jump in if you guys have anything else. All right. Kirk, since you were on the last one there, can we always have all of those boxes checked before each call? Are we always going to be dialed in 100% on everything that we do?
No.
And that's an honest answer. Nobody in their life is 100% always dialed in. What do we need to do if we're not checked in all the way, and how many boxes need to be checked before I can go on one of these calls?
You need to be safe.
Yeah, I think that's really what it boils down to. You kind of need to do that self-check every day, I think. Do I have enough awareness about where I am today? Am I mentally checked in? Am I emotionally checked in? Do I have enough going on good for me today that I can respond? And we kind of take some of that superhero powers that we think that we have and kind of put them off to the side, because it's not about what I think I can do. It's about being that honest assessment about what I'm really actually capable of today. And if I'm not capable of being safe on a scene, if I'm not capable of being a good contributor, I need to know when it's time to pull myself out. I left this picture up here on purpose just to kind of share my own personal experience with this. So that picture was taken. That was the day after my fiance had left me. This was many years ago, and this was on a structure fire the next morning. So really, I didn't have enough time to emotionally deal with what I was going through. I was not dialed into that scene. Luckily, we were fortunate enough, nothing bad happened. I had a good veteran crew that was with me. Everyone knew what they were doing and wasn't going to allow me not being dialed in affect that scene. But there was too much of a potential for that scene to be bad just because of where I was at. I was not doing a good job checking in with myself and knowing when it was time to not respond to a call because I was not dialed in. And I think, during the day side here, because this is a day side drill, most of us aren't coming back at night. Some of us on here are coming back at night on the volunteer side, but we kind of have that luxury of knowing when things aren't good, I can take a vacation day, or I can, maybe I have to take a leave, or maybe you know, you can talk to some people at work and say, hey, you know, I'm not dialed into this today. You know, I'm here to do my job, but I'm not going to be able to, you know, perform these tasks or functions like I usually am. And we need to have those honest conversations with ourselves and with others, because if we're not dialed in, it really just puts everyone else at risk. It makes these scenes not safe. Kind of like Kirk said, if I'm not going to be able to be there and make things safe, then I shouldn't be there. So I know we've all had those days. I know we've all had things that we've had to deal with in our life. And I think sometimes we like to use, you know, firefighting or a fire call or anything else as a distractor. We like to say, oh, okay, I can forget about whatever else is going on in my life, and I can just enjoy this fire call and get that adrenaline, and maybe that'll make things better. But that's not what a fire call is for. We can't use that as something that we can distract ourselves with. We're going there for somebody else's emergency. We're going there for our team, for our community, and we need to be dialed in, and we need to be safe, and we need to make sure that we're not allowing ourselves to be on a scene that we're just not going to be able to make good decisions on or be 100% engaged with what's going on. So again, that's my personal experience, and I just share it because I know everyone has these. We're all shooting for those 20, 30-year careers, and I can guarantee you in that 20, 30-year stretch, none of us are going to have every single day where we're 100%. So know when you're at those days that you're just not, and make sure that you're pulling yourself out and taking care of yourself, or maybe you're taking care of your family or whatever that might be, because you know, if we can't be on scene and be dialed in, it's not doing anybody any good. All right, so for firefighters, some of the things that we can think about for a firefighter before a call even comes in is it's just being proficient in your skills. You are task completers, right? The firefighters are the ones that I expect we can hand a task to, and they're going to get it done. We also need to have our firefighters, you know how to, excuse me, learn how to follow your officer's lead, and learn how to follow them, because I think that's kind of a lost art. Is we expect our officers to lead, and we kind of put a lot of the onus on them, but at the same time, we need to, as firefighters, learn how to follow them, and learn what they're good at and maybe where their weaknesses are, and work with them to understand how we can follow them best on a fire scene and just around the station and throughout whatever tasks that we have. Because if we're not kind of meeting in the middle there's always going to be that disconnect. Like Kirk said earlier, you know, learning how to work with other crew members. You know, are we working as a cohesive group? Do we understand that when we need to go pull a hose, that I know firefighter XYZ is going to be able to work with me, and they're going to grab tools and meet me at the front door, and do they know what tools to grab, and have I practiced that with them before? You know, and if you haven't, again, you look around your stations, look with your crews. If there's somebody that you're there with that doesn't, or you look at it and you go, I don't know if I've ever done that with them, or I don't know how they would do that, you know, it's time to have a conversation with them and say, hey, you know, if we get up on this fire scene, we're told to grab tools, you know, how does that look? Who's doing what? How does this flow? And that's some of the things that we need to build before that call even happens. It also comes down to if we know that we have a weakness or we need help on a skill, you got to kind of speak up. If we don't know everything about our operations, or we're not really sure about how this piece of equipment or something else works, or how we're supposed to complete the a left-hand search inside of a building, you know, that's the time to talk to your officer. It's time to talk to me or anybody in training and say, hey, how does this actually look? And then try to start learning those things ahead of time. Because if we're trying to learn them on scene or hope that we can just follow an order, it's not going to go well. And then we also need to make sure that we're doing that, checking in on ourselves physically. Am I ready to go? If I'm trying to, you know, milk an injury, and yeah, maybe I'll just be able to show up on scene, and you know, maybe I just won't have to use that foot today, or whatever it is. You know, you can't hope for that. You got to make sure that we're ready to go, and take the time off that we need to make sure that we can heal and take care of ourselves. And that goes for the mental and emotional categories as well. For an FAO, again, we need to know our skills, right? As an FAO, we have to know our apparatus, and it's not so much about just knowing that I can, you know, charge a hand line. It's about knowing, you know, if this intake doesn't work, what other intakes do I have at my disposal? If how close to a hydrant do I need to be to use my short section? of hydrant. You know, it's knowing that apparatus in and out. We're on a scene. You don't even have to think about what needs to happen. You just know how to take care of it. We need to know our streets, our addresses, common response routes. A lot of times when I work with my FAO on the truck, I don't expect them to know 100% how to get there without looking at anything. I do expect them to know that they're going to have to get on Highway 65, go south, and then end up going east on 109th and then turn onto Radisson and, you know, and whatever else. They're going to know that main route that they're going to have to take to get to that area. And then I, as an officer, I'm going to be able to tell them, all right, you're going to turn, you know, a right now over here, and the house will be 3 up on your left. And we got a hydrant right on the corner there. So knowing your response areas, knowing addresses, knowing if you were told an address, how you would start to get there is going to be a beneficial thing for an FAO. Knowing your primary trucks and your response needs. So what truck goes where, if a call comes in, what truck am I supposed to take, and why is it that truck, and what are the reasons for it? Know their limits and their abilities and the equipment that we carry. You know, so if there's a call that comes in, typically we would take, you know, maybe an engine to this call, but the call comes in and it sounds like we need some specific equipment that maybe is carried on the rescue instead of the engine. Maybe that's the time that the rescue needs to go out first. So again, kind of knowing what we carry and how it's going to benefit our scene. And again, having that conversation with your officer before you even go is going to be beneficial, because the officer ultimately is going to be the one that makes the decision on what truck's going. We also have to make sure that the apparatus and the equipment's ready to go. That's something that I always kind of fall back to, that the FAO is checking on those things. That's always kind of been the responsibility of the FAO, that they're kind of taking the ownership of that truck and the equipment on it. Is everything in good working order, and does anything need to be worked on or fixed or ready to go? So anytime that truck is parked in an apparatus bay, I fully expect that it's 100% ready to go, and that kind of falls back on the FAO. We need to take that ownership after each call, that we're ensuring that we're doing it. Now, that is a group effort. All the firefighters, the officers, everyone after a call is getting it checked back in. But I do believe that it's the FAO that needs to lead that and ensure that it's all taken care of. Again, working with your officer, having good communication and knowing, just like a firefighter needs to know how to work with their officer and the rest of their crew, that FAO needs to know how to work with their officer and their expectations on where it comes to spotting that apparatus or what needs you're going to have on scene. Having those good communications before a call even comes in, or even when you're en route to that call, on what that officers are thinking. Because if they're thinking, you know, to use the deck gun, and you're thinking using a 2.5, and you get on scene and you didn't have that conversation, and all of a sudden they get on scene and say that they're going to use a deck gun and you didn't park in the right spot, that's not good. So again, make sure that you're having those conversations. I don't want, you know, while we're en route to have 30 different conversations, but if we have very specific conversations on how we're going to get there, what we're going to do once we get there, and thinking about how that's all going to play out, I think that's going to be a successful conversation to have. And then again, we need to know when it's time to speak up on learning something, or maybe we have a misunderstanding on something, and learning when we can have those conversations and talk with our officers or anybody above about what needs to happen in the future for SOGs or different needs operationally. Again, it always falls back to, are we checking in every day before we show up? Am I physically, mentally, and emotionally checked in enough today to be a good responder? Because if I'm not, I can guarantee you we don't really want you on scene. We want you to go ahead and take care of yourself, make sure that you're good to go, and then come back to us ready to work with us. Company officers, you're the task supervisor. You know, you're really the one that needs to be ensuring that the tasks are getting done. Your job is there to learn how your crew works, know their strengths and their weaknesses, make sure that things are getting done and following within the parameters that were set forth with the incident action plan of the scene. Just really making sure that things are going well. And that really is part of it, is knowing the department's operations. What crews are needed for what tasks, what equipment and apparatus are needed to complete them. If we know those things ahead of time and know those things, and try to focus on having that mindset before a call even comes in, thinking about those if this call comes in today, what would I send? What do we need? How do I take care of that? We don't really have to think about it once we're on scene. We can know what to do ahead of time. If we're always focused on leading our crews instead of managing them, the manager, it just becomes second nature. You know, if we lead them and give them, you know, good encouragement and work with them and show them how things are done and really ensure that they're dialed in and ready to go, we're not going to have to worry so much about managing them once we're on scene. Speak up when you need help. You know, company officers, a lot of times we feel like we're out on an island and we have to take care of the crew and we're kind of that middle management. But just know you're not alone. You've got other company officers that are there to help you. You've got department administration and FAOs and even some lead firefighters that can help you with what you're doing. So when you need help and you need somebody to kind of chip in, or you need to kind of bounce some ideas off of somebody else, you know, make sure you're doing that, because a lot of times we feel like you're just kind of doing it by yourself, and that's not going to be helpful. And again, we need to be making sure that we're doing that physical, mental, emotional check-in, but I also need to make sure that I'm doing that with my crew. You need to be able to kind of tell when somebody's not in the right frame of mind, you know, and not allow them to be working on a crew that's going to potentially make them into a bad spot or put that crew in a bad spot. So it's easy to kind of call somebody out and say, hey, man, what was that? That looked horrible. But at the same time, it's maybe a better idea to say, hey, what's going on? You know, are you dialed in today? Or maybe something, they're having to deal with something that's preventing them from being 100% dialed in that day. So really make sure that we're checking in, taking care of our crews, and that everyone's ready to go. And that's going to be really beneficial. So if we fix the problems before, excuse me, we need to fix the problem before the symptoms do the damage. So a lot of times we see the symptoms and we have to deal with the symptoms, but there's generally a bigger problem that's causing them. So if we focus on what is the cause of the little symptoms that we see every day, we're definitely going to be putting ourselves in a much better position. All right, now we're going to start getting into the meat of things, responding to the call. And I'm sure we could all agree that we all miss those pagers a lot, and any of the pagers that came before them, because our current ones are a joy to say the least. So before or while we're responding to the call, what are some of the things that we need to be considering? What do we need to be thinking about? Let's see. Blaine Dreyfus, I see you up at the top of the screen here. What do you got for that? And you guys aren't so much on your way to the station. You're more, you see the call come in, maybe up on CAD, maybe you're in your office, or you're maybe out in a squad. But once that call comes in, what do we need to start thinking about?
Yeah, just general call basics. You know, what is the call? Is it a medical? Is it a fire? Yeah, if we're in our personal squads responding, getting there safely, of course, and you know, can we make it back to the station? What do we have back for crews at the station? You know, that's been a big topic now too, with everybody out and about quite a bit too. So what personnel are responding with the engine apparatus or Rescue 14? So lots of things to consider just to prep ourselves in that way, like we've talked about this morning already.
Absolutely, and that's a great point that you're talking about, because we're a little bit different during the day, and you guys are a little bit different during the day, because you're maybe not all right at the station. Maybe people are out and about and doing things, and we need to start thinking about how do we staff, who's staffing, who's taking what piece of equipment. Am I needed to go back to the station? Am I needed to go directly to the scene? And a lot of that comes with just, you know, the communications beforehand. If we know who's around and who's not, that kind of helps us in those general thought processes and things that we need to do. But if we just kind of lose our mind and see that a call comes in and we all just kind of throw our hands up and let adrenaline take over and just start rushing, we're not really dialed in enough to know what was going on and what needs to happen. So it's great to talk about thinking. Once that call comes in, what do we need to think about? So some of the things that I thought of is, you know, what was the call? Where is the call? You know, and especially for us during the day, you know, what primary station needs to take it, because it just comes in as a duty crew call. So then we have to think about, all right, is that a 1 call? Is it a 3 call? Is it a 5 call? You know, who's taking it? Do I need is it on a high-speed roadway? Do we need a second truck? All those things need to start coming into play. If I'm going to go, you know, what tasks will I be doing? Like Blaine said, is it a medical? Do I need to worry about, is this a CPR? Do I need to, maybe Blaine PD is going to be there. They're going to have a rescue pump on, and I need to take over rescue pump operations. You know, whatever that is, what training do I need to start recalling? You know, if it's an airport call, you know, do I need to start thinking about, all right, now where would an apparatus spot? Where do we stage? How do I approach an aircraft if it does crash? And different angles and which way is the wind coming from, and what training do I need to recall and think about for how we're going to suppress this call. So all things to be thinking about.
Hey, Chad.
Yep, go
One
ahead.
comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it happened. It was last week or the week prior. We had multiple calls. We're getting stacked on each other, and
Yep.
I know a couple times it was radioed for 5 to cover those, and I would suggest that we ask dispatch to retone the duty crew and ask for 5 to respond, because if our guys are out in the field, like a lot of times I'll hear you guys go out, I'll reset my pager, I'm out doing an inspection, I'm not intently listening to the radio, and that's certainly can be the case with a lot of the guys, or they're in their office on the phone or something. So we try to listen as much as possible, but I would suggest that we look at this at the department level for the day side, that, you know, if you need a second station, you ask for, you know, the duty crew to be toned again and ask for that second station to respond to that call. That hopefully, you know, address, you know, questioning, are we going or not? Because, you know, for us, obviously, we don't radio into route usually until we get down to the station. You know, that's a minute and a half or so to run down there. So you guys are probably sitting there going, well, did they hear us? Did they not hear us?
Yep. Well, and that's a great point, because I think the times that does happen is you maybe have engine 5 going out with a crew of 1 or 2, because that's the only people that were still listening, you know, and that's not fair. I shouldn't say fair, but that's not efficient. You know, we need to have that retone to make sure that all right, they did request us. And I think that is something that we need to realize is a weakness to our response during the day, is that we're not toning a direct station. We're just toning a general duty crew, and then just kind of thinking about who needs to respond. Well, then if I need that station, we need to make sure that we alert that station and get them coming. So that's a great point, and something that we have uniquely during the day that we need to consider.
Yeah.
Been more of a problem. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
It's been more of a problem because of the new pagers closing. They don't stay open.
Exactly. Yep. So with the pagers resetting, if you're not holding on to a radio, or like Bob was saying, if you're working on something or back to an inspection or whatever you're doing, you're not going to be hearing any of that radio communication. So if we're trying to hope that somebody's still listening, more often than not, we're probably only going to get those 1 or 2 people that still are, just because of the radio that they have or the position that they're sitting in back in the office, where they can hear that that's coming back in. So I absolutely agree with that. We need to make sure that we're identifying that as how do we take care of that in the future.
So Chad, I'm not sure what the delivery of that would be now. If that's at an officers meeting, if that's at a staff meeting, with just daytime, full time. But yeah, if you could bring that forward and see if we can get that, you know, actually set that, yeah, here's the procedure, here's the SOG. If you need another station to cover for you, or even if you need assistance, you ask for the duty page again, and and again, whatever you're requesting. So
yep, no, absolutely. I think that's something I'll follow up today, but I'm sure it'll be at the next staff meeting that we have, is maybe we can talk about how we want to roll forward with it once we have a little conversation. So I think that's a great thing for us to move forward with. Yep, absolutely.
And in 2 weeks, we have our operations meeting and call review, so it might be a good time to talk about it then as well.
That's a great point, because we'd have that during the day for our drill. So maybe we can even hopefully have some answers by then and kind of say what we're going to drive forward with. So great idea.
Hey, another quick question for you guys. What's your opinion on copying calls like we used to do for that 1.5, 2 minute lag time? Any opinion on that?
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, especially with us here, because of that delay. I mean, if it's, I know it got to be too much when every station was copying on an all call and this and that. It got to be a lot of radio traffic, but I don't know about you guys, Chad, listening on the other end. You guys are probably thinking the same thing. Well, are they there? Are they not there? You know, if we all, for the most part, everybody has a radio at the desk, and if one of us, and we'd have to figure out how we did that, but somebody at least got on the radio and said, you know, Station 5 copies call, be en route shortly. something like that. So you guys know, yep, we heard it. And it could go into that same discussion with the repaging, but at least that way, you know that we've copied the call, we're making the run, and we'll be out the door shortly.
Sure. I know
So
for me
maybe-
personally, I always trust that you guys are there. I mean, we know that you're staffed, and we know that it takes a little bit of time. So I never really have that concern on, well, are they going to go or not? It's just generally, you know, I just know that there's going to be that slight delay from getting from the office down to the apparatus base. So, but I think it's worth having that larger conversation, like you said. So maybe I'll plan on taking that in with that other question, and then seeing if we can't come up with a broader definition for how we want to proceed forward.
Yeah, it kind of becomes I mean, when it really becomes apparent is when we have those, okay, which side of the road is that? Is that threes? Is that ours? Is that
Yep.
ones? Is that ours?
Yep.
That's usually when it becomes the, you know, we run down there and then we'll hear, okay, Angel One's checking the services. Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and that's, you know, that's nobody's fault
No,
because
no.
we don't know specifically, is that north or south of, you know, the
Exactly,
particular
yeah.
road? So
If it comes in on 101st, well, 101st is the divider for the day or
Right.
whatever it is. Well, it's hard to say whose call it actually is. Yeah, so that's a good point.
yeah, so adding that to that other conversation, I think would be good. Good point to bring up, Blaine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think all that can be talked about. I think that's good stuff for us to be reviewing and talking about anyway, especially during the day, because we're unique in that sense. It's a different set of issues and operations that we deal with. So, and it makes us better to talk about those things. So, cool. Yeah. So again, just when responding to the call, I think we kind of hit on a lot of that. Is just making sure that we're operationally dialed in. What is that response needed? And let's not forget to take that breath. Not so much for this crew during the day. I think we've all got enough experience. We've been here long enough. A lot of us are able to kind of digest what that call is and what needs to happen and kind of respond with that cool, calm head. But one of the conversations we had at night is operationally, we're probably have the least amount of experience at the firefighter level than we've had in a very, very, very long time. So kind of getting everyone to just kind of calm down, take that breath, think about what needs to happen, and not allow that adrenaline to decide for us what we're going to be doing. So if we take control and calm and know our job and know our roles, it's going to be that much better of a scene. And it starts early on. You can't expect to get on scene and then finally take that breath. You got to do it right away. Let's see. Jonathan, you want to go ahead and tell me what roles do a firefighter have to do once they're on scene? What's expected out of them? Did I lose you? Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
sorry, I stepped out to get some coffee here.
No,
Want to repeat the question?
That would be the timing of it, wouldn't it? No,
Yeah, I
it's
told
just-
Jim to cover for me.
So for firefighters' roles is what we're at right now. Once we're on scene, you know, what are the expectations and responsibilities that we have for a firefighter? How is that scene going to roll out well for our firefighters? What if they follow the following roles?
Well, I guess for us, it kind of depends on like where you're seating in the back, how many people you have, and you kind of fall back on like what have you seen before, kind of that OODA loop: observe, orientation, decide, and act. So
Yep.
you're going off the guidance off your officer, but you also got to rely on like you've done this before and take a look at what you're seeing and
Yep.
go with what's been called.
Well, feel free to jump in. This is some of the things that I wrote down. It's when you get off the truck, you're ready to go, right? I mean, you got to have your equipment. You got to know the job. You got to know your task, kind of like you said. If I know the job, if I've done it before, I'm going to be ready to go and be able to complete that. One of the things that we're still kind of getting used to is just making sure that everyone has that radio. And then how do we operate with everyone having a radio? You know, we still need to make sure that our officer has it turned up so they can communicate and hear everything. But if everyone else has a radio and they're also turned up and all of a sudden we're going to get that feedback inside of the building, that's not going to be a good thing. So everyone has a radio for a reason, but we also need to know operationally who's turning them down, who's covering it, who it might not even be on if you're working in close proximity to your officer, and knowing when to turn it on and get on the right channel. Making sure we have our flashlight and the tools for the job. So just really making sure that we're dialed in, we're ready to go. If we get off the truck and I don't have a radio, a flashlight, and tools, I'm just kind of expecting to take care of that fire with my bare hands, that's not going to go well. So always grab a tool, always come up prepared, ready to go for the job. Get off the truck with a point of making sure that you're ready to go and that you're going to get something done, not just waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. Listen to your officer and your orders. So again, that officer is going to be the one that's directing you. If they say, hey, you know, firefighters in the back, I need a line to the front door with tools ready to go while I complete a 360. Again, make sure that you're getting that done, that you listen to your officer, and when they come around from that 360, that you guys are ready to go. The hose is all flaked out. You got tools off the truck ready to go up at that front door, and that you're dialed in and ready for that. So make sure that we're going to where our orders are, and know who's working with you and who's assigned to your crew. Know the strategy and what the overall goal is. So if we're here in defensive fire, you know, that should kind of change some of our thought process and tactics as a firefighter versus if I'm hearing interior offensive attack, you know. So just know what that strategy is, that overall goal, what that incident action plan is, and how that's going to affect you and what your expectations are going to be on that scene. So our firefighters, we're the task completers, right? We're the ones that need to go in and get things done on a fire scene. So really what it boils down to is you guys need to be able to do a search and complete a rescue. You need to be able to do fire control. You need to be able to do ventilation, ladder deployment, salvage overhaul, and utility securing on scene. Those are really the roles that I expect out of our firefighters on a fire scene. Not just to be able to be told how to do these things on scene, but actually to know them in and out. You know, that these are your bread and butter. These are the things that you need to focus on and train on and own as your roles on a scene, and own as, this is what I'm going to take care of, and know my job in and out. So it's just kind of getting back to understanding these are my responsibilities. These are my ownership of the tasks that I'm going to be completing. So really own these. So when it comes down to a search, again, it goes back to, if I look around the truck and we're told to do a search, do I know that everyone in that truck is going to be doing the same search, or understand that, you know, I'm going to anchor in the hallway and then you're going to go in and search that bedroom? So it comes back to working with that crew, working with the people that you are going to be assigned to on that truck, and understanding, hey, we've been assigned a primary. That means we're going to get in here, do a really quick search, and then come back and give us hopefully a negative result, or hopefully a quick find on a patient and get them taken care of. What tools do I need to bring with on a search? How am I going to, you know, make myself that much better of a searcher? Do I have a tick? Do I have a tool that can give me some reach and kind of find and orient myself in this room? Do I have a flashlight, or do I have somebody that's making sure that we're not going to get lost in here, that they're kind of being that orienting firefighter, which is typically going to be your company officer? If I've been assigned a secondary, do I understand that means that it's a much more defined search? I need to really make sure that we're getting in there and looking through everything, because that primary already went through. And my secondary needs to be able to come back and say, if I'm saying we have nothing, that means we have nothing in this room or in this house. So really understanding, if I say a secondary is complete, it better mean that a secondary is complete. Or if I say a primary is complete, it better mean a primary has been completed, and it better be quick. So just knowing the differences between the two, knowing how to complete those functions, knowing how to work with the crew. I'm not going to go through and say how we should search today. I think we cover all those things at other drills and other trainings, but today should be more of the focus on, if I have a question on how I would do this with my crew, or if I don't have this completely dialed in, how do I need to get back to that? Fire control. If I'm told to do a quick hit, do I understand what that means? A quick hit means I'm going to go ahead and get that fire to retreat back into that room. I'm going to do a really steep angle, either through a door or a window, with that hose line. I'm not moving it much because I don't want to disturb the thermal layering and anything else. I want to bounce that water stream off the ceiling, and then we're going to be making a quick entry after that. It's a quick hit for a reason. It's kind of what we consider more of a transitional attack. I'm getting that fire to retreat back into that room so I can go attack it. An interior attack means I'm going inside. I'm going to go get this fire because it's probably back in there a little bit. It's not showing itself at all. But I need to also be ready to push it back from one room to another possibly, or keep in mind on what's going on above my head, and how we're going to go ahead and make sure that this flow path isn't established and makes things worse. For a defensive attack, do I understand that, you know, we're basically writing this building off? This building is not going to be saved. It's a defensive attack. I need to now start protecting the buildings around it. Hopefully protect, once though I can ensure and establish that everything's been protected around it, now I can start focusing on making this fire less of a problem and start addressing that. How we deploy to all those is going to be different. So knowing how to deploy, knowing how to get my hose flaked out, knowing how to own my role and my tasks is huge in each and every one of these. So really making sure that I'm not just doing these tasks, I own these tasks, I know these tasks, I'm a master of these tasks. You know, that's, as firefighters, we need to own those roles and know what we're doing each and every single time. It's the same with ventilation. We don't do a whole lot of vertical ventilation, but if we're assigned to it, I need to make sure that I'm doing it in a safe way. I need to make sure that it's being effective. I need to make sure if I'm doing positive pressure, it's not just throwing a fan at the front door and then hoping smoke goes away. You know, we need to know what doors are open on the inside. If I open up all the windows on the Charlie side of this building, I'm probably going to have very limited effect on actually getting a good flow path of smoke out the backside. It's about controlling what that ventilation actually is. So we need to understand when, why, and where we're doing it and what effect it's actually going to have, and what are the limits and drawbacks to what we're doing. For ladders, we need to know if we're throwing a ladder, you know, we don't throw ladders to the side of a window if it's a secondary egress. The ladder needs to be thrown to the bottom of the window. And that's very important, because if that crew that's on that upper level calls a mayday and they're told that there's a ladder at a window on the Alpha Bravo side, they go to that window and they can't find it because it's not where it should be, or they can't access it because it hasn't been placed in the right spot. You know, we're not doing them any favors. So we need to make sure that we're placing ladders properly. We know how to deploy them quickly. We can throw them and place them properly, and that we're getting things put into the right positions. If we're going to be using them for a rescue, how do we work on them? How do we, you know, make sure that we're anchoring ourselves on these ladders to reach out and make sure that we're not going to fall? So it really comes down to, you know, making sure that we know this in and out on every single bit of these. Where does a ladder go? How do I become a master of deploying the ladder and making sure that the scene is going to be set up properly? Because again, all of these items, if we're not doing them properly, if we're not setting them up initially the right way, the scene is not going to unfold nice. And then we see it all the time. If we don't deploy our aerial ladder to the right spot, it slows down the scene. If we don't deploy a ground ladder to the right spot or properly, it slows down the scene. If I don't flake a hose out properly, I'm going to need more resources to help push that hose to the rest of the building. You know, we need to make sure that we're doing it right the first time, and that's going to establish that the first 5 minutes go really well and allows for the rest of the scene to also go very well. It's the same with utilities, overhaul, salvage. You know, I need to know if I'm protecting property, what does that mean? You know, how do I protect property? What should I identify as what property needs to be protected, and am I doing it in place, or am I bringing it outside? If I'm accessing hotspots, I need to be very aggressive with how I'm going to open up this room. If I'm going to check for a hidden fire or any extension. If I'm very slow, or if I don't have the right tools to do that, it's going to limit my ability and the success of us being able to do that. Securing power and gas and water. If we know how to do those things and it's second nature to us, then we don't have to worry about coming back to it later. And then also doing a good job of wetting down and a final wet down. If we do everything properly, the fire stays out, which is really our goal. We don't want to be coming back to anything. So these are all just very basic tasks that a firefighter has to complete on a fire ground. But really it comes down to, are we training on these skills until we can't get them wrong? You know, we need to make sure that the expectation is there, that we can't just hope that we get on scene and somebody's going to help us fix our problems. You know, we're the ones that have to get these tasks done right the first time. We need to communicate with your officers and your crew. You know, when you're completing a search, if you're all silent, you know, you're not helping anybody out. But if you're talking to your crew, hey, you know, completing a left-hand search, I'm in the bedroom, or I found a window, going through a door, you know, having that focused, good communication is going to be very important. I don't want to go to the days that we're just kind of screaming everything that we had, but if you're being calm and focused on what that communication is, it's going to help everyone do their jobs that much better. Because if you're saying that you're going through a door and that you're in a bedroom, and the second firefighter is all of a sudden saying, well, I've got a dishwasher or a toilet or something else, be like, well, wait a minute, we're not in the same room, or you're not seeing the right thing. So it's really just going to help us be a cohesive group. And we need to make sure that that communication, again, just stays short and based on the conditions, actions, and needs, and ensures that we're maintaining that par. So again, it kind of comes back to just having good CAN reports. And if we're giving CAN reports to our officers, they're going to be able to give good CAN reports back to divisions and incident command at the same time. Jerry Rudd, you want to give me some FAO roles? What do we expect and want to see from our FAOs on scene?
Well, I guess first off would be truck placement. Ensuring you have the truck in the right spot. And then once the crew deploys whatever hand line they're going to pull or whatever you're setting up for, you know, approximately where you should start out with pump pressures.
Mm-hmm.
Know how to troubleshoot the truck. If you have a issue with priming the pump or a supply issue, you know how to troubleshoot, how to adjust on the fly to still accomplish some goals of water movement. Knowing what gear and supplies you do have on your truck and that everything is ready to go and assist with the needs the crew may come up with as the scene develops. You know, if they are suddenly looking for, you know, a saw for entry or forcible entry tools that they didn't bring with, you know, just being able to adapt to the scene as it evolves.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good description of what we would expect out of an FAO. So a lot of times we have firefighters that have to operate as an FAO, right? And then there's also people that are truly in that FAO position. So I think when we're talking about that FAO position, you know, you really need to be that master of your craft, right? We kind of have that expectation that you're going to be able to deal with the problems and troubleshooting and all those extra things that we expect out of our drivers. So I think you hit on a lot of that. So it all starts with spotting, right? We need to know where a primary position would be. We need to know where level one actually is going to be and the difference between the two and when do I go from one to the other. Working with your officer, listening to your orders, making sure that you're on the same page. Again, it goes back to if I was expecting a deck gun and they wanted a 2.5, you know, we need to be on the same page and know what the orders are going to be. Comes back to operating the truck. And that's, like Jerry said, it's the troubleshooting. It's the little parts and pieces that, you know, everyone else might not know, but you know how to deal with this intake doesn't work, now where do I go? Dealing with water supply needs, knowing when that water supply is going to need to be established based on fire conditions, lines that are selected, tank water, all that stuff. And then lastly, just being an active part of the scene. We don't want FAOs that just kind of sit at the pump panel and, well, I'm just here to adjust pressures if pressures are needed to be adjusted. Once you have lines established, water supply established, like Jerry was saying, do I need to bring tools up on scene? Do I need to get a cord reel brought up? Do I need to bring up a fan? Do I need to bring up scene lighting? You know, whatever that might be. If you're an active part of that and kind of doing those roles, it makes everything flow so much better on a scene. So again, just going back to how we would spot trucks, you know, primary placement, the first engine and the first ladder get primary placement on a scene. So that first engine arrives, we need to think about, as an engine, am I leaving room for a ladder? One of the sayings is, you know, you can always add more hose on a hose lay, but I can't add more ladder to a ladder truck. So when I joined, you know, we always talk about when the engine got on scene, you pulled up the engine just past the driveway, so the tailboard was at just past the driveway, you know, and that was on engine one because hose came off the back of engine one. And what you did is you had that driveway to lay up, and it gave you that nice, easy lay up the driveway. But by doing that, we kind of limited the access that we would give to a ladder truck. So as we've kind of evolved and gone over the years, we've started to talk about, you know, how do we best set up a scene where a ladder truck can get a primary position? And for me, one thing to think about is the driveway is almost always going to give you a nice access point to access the house for a ladder. So if I can position my turntable kind of at the end of a ladder, it's going to give me that nice access up the driveway, because there aren't any trees, there aren't any obstructions through a driveway. There might be, you know, trees that grow over, but you're generally going to have that nice shoot up the driveway. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule on every single house, but it is something to think about. And we need FAOs that think about those things when they get up on scene, because if we're just trying to get up on scene and just park wherever we can get closest, you know, that's not going to be beneficial for the overall layout of the scene. Because if I really did need that ladder, especially later on in the scene, but I took the position that the ladder needed, again, it's just going to slow down that scene as it unfolds. So the work that we do while we arrive, the work that we do and put in that first 5 minutes of that scene really dictates how the rest of the scene is going to go. Knowing your staging location. So first engine already arrived, first ladder already arrived. If that first engine already established a water supply from that hydrant, I need to go to that next available hydrant, right? So my engine's going to stage at the next hydrant. And that's going to help us out, because if this hydrant doesn't work, it's non-operable, or that engine goes down, or whatever that might be, or maybe I need a second water supply for that ladder truck. If that engine is placed properly, I can very quickly grab that hydrant supply and lay into that ladder truck. I think we do a very good job of making sure that our second arriving engine goes to the next hydrant, but it's just something for us to make sure that we're always thinking about and always addressing. Because if I pull into that scene and I park my engine up here, and command goes, well, I needed that hydrant, well, it really kind of slows the scene down again. I'd rather you stop at that hydrant, say that you're staged, and then either have command tell you to get out of your truck and come up to the scene, or have them tell you to pull your truck up to that scene because they don't need the hydrant. But if you make the decision for them, it really limits our operations. One thing to think about on these scenes as well is we're probably not going to have a ton of space anyways. You know, if you get your first engine, your first ladder, maybe there's a Chiefs rig, utility 16 is going to pull in, you're going to have a Lina, you're going to have squad cars. You know, this whole area is probably going to be eaten up, right? So we might be a couple houses down anyways for that next available engine to actually get up on scene. So the less that we clog that up, the better off that we're going to be operationally as that scene unfolds. For that second arriving ladder truck, we're always going to take that last means of egress or entrance into that scene. So for me, that's always kind of finding that last corner before you pull in. If I stop here, I can always pull out and go around the block, or do whatever command might need me to do, especially if they determine that a ladder truck's needed somewhere else on this scene other than where that primary position was. But if I pull all the way in and kind of face that engine right there, we all know backing a ladder truck out of there or trying to get them turned around and put into a different position or drive around the block, it's going to take time. But if I position properly and stage accordingly to what we should be doing, it's going to be able to flow that much quicker. It's going to be able to respond to those scenes so much better. We also need to be considering what our water supply needs are anytime that we're spotting trucks. So maybe we're grabbing a hydrant on the way in, maybe we're not, maybe we're waiting for that second truck to grab the hydrant supply. You know, each scene's going to kind of dictate that. But if we're also in a non-hydranted area, we need to start thinking about, how do I get a nice drop tank operation, or maybe a nursing operation from one tender to an engine on a scene, and then still allowing for that nice flow of traffic in and out. Because if I don't have to back tenders up and turn them around and kind of struggle to get them through, if they have a nice flow through that scene, it really allows things to flow very nicely. And tender operations aren't something we do a lot of, but it is something that we still have the possibility of dealing with. So we need to always keep that in mind. If this is a scene that's going to require a tender, how do I set it up nice so we don't slow the operations down as this goes on? If I think about it in the first 5 minutes, it's going to make the rest of the scene flow that much better. So know what you're...
Hey, Chad, before you go on there.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I know you're talking about FAO roles.
Yep.
But again, and you mentioned it earlier, and I just want to reiterate it because in all the years as an officer and non-scene, a lot of times first, I've I've seen this happen. It's imperative that your officer and your FAO are working together and are talking to each other. So like you said earlier, they're both on the same page. And if that's not happening, as you said, that's a big mess. And then it goes one step further is if you already have a chief officer or somebody else on scene, is to, again, be communicating with them to find out where do they want you so that you don't make that mess. So that was probably one of my biggest pet peeves as a chief officer, when the truck just comes barreling in and I already had a plan to deal with it. And now my plan is now screwed because they didn't wait for some orders as to where to come in. It's one thing if you're the first arriving unit, but if there's already somebody there, we need to make sure that we're communicating. So
that's a great point. And I think too, if you're even the first arriving engine and that initial command, like you said, making sure that you had that good communication with your driver and your officer, setting things up properly. When I'm on the ladder, I like to I don't like to say that I'm getting on scene early, but I like to allow command that little bit of time to know that I am approaching the scene. So if they had a specific spot where they wanted that ladder truck, they have time to now reach out to me and let me know, yep, I want you up on scene, or stay out of here because we don't need you and we can't fit you, or whatever that is. When you allow command that time to react to getting you on scene and positioned, it makes everything flow so much better in my mind. So kind of like you said, allow command and that first arriving IC, they have a plan. They're there already. And if we kind of push their hand and force them into something that doesn't work for their plan, again, it's going to slow things down and it's not going to help and be beneficial. So that's an excellent point that you have there. All right, so again, for that FAO, knowing your orders, knowing what your crews are going to do, what line are we pulling, what appliances are going to be put on it. If we have a defensive fire, we're going to be probably flowing continuous water, right? So if we're setting up a blitz fire, and I didn't establish a water supply, a blitz fire is going to be going through 250 to 300 some gallons per minute, and if you're on engines 3, 4, or 5, you've only got 500 gallons of tank water. You're going to be out of water within probably about a minute and a half on scene. So if we know what's going to be established and what appliances we're using and the orders that crews are given, we're going to be able to start thinking ahead about when my water supply is going to be gone, when it should be addressed, how I make sure that things are done properly. If they're pulling a 2.5 with an apartment pack inside to the 3rd floor, you need to start thinking about, maybe I need a little bit more pressure than I would typically put on there because they're going to have some kinks in the hose line as they go up that stairway, and we got to deploy that Cleveland load in the hallway. So making sure that I have the right pressures and fitting the scene is going to be important. Also, if I'm on a dumpster fire, I don't need 145 PSI on a 100-foot 1 3/4, right? You're going to knock somebody over. So again, knowing what the crews are grabbing, what they're doing, and kind of like Jerry said earlier, knowing what some of those initial pressures need to be to make sure that we're successful are going to be huge. I kind of also expect our FAOs to kind of start doing that thought process on when does that water supply need to be established. If that company officer is saying, yeah, we're going to use a deck gun and this and that, and they didn't address a water supply, you kind of need to be that voice of reason saying, hey, Cap, we're going to be out of water before any of that's even deployed, So getting the scene, the truck operations done, that's your wheelhouse. You're the one that owns those operations. So making sure that they run smooth is all on you. So operating that apparatus, monitoring our intake pressure. A lot of times, I don't want to see an FAO that just sits at the pump panel and just keeps giving more pressure or less pressure or whatever's asked for. I want somebody that's actively watching, is my intake pressure at 10 PSI? Because if it is, and command asks for another line to be charged, that it's not possible. You know that you're already maxed out. And you can kind of see how scenes are unfolding, and you're going to start predicting when they're going to want new lines or something else established. You're going to be able to tell them, you need to get another truck or another water supply established because I'm maxed out. So the more that you can be ahead of the curve is going to be super beneficial. So ensuring that we have the correct pressures, ensuring that we're setting up the ladder and we left room for outriggers and we positioned the ladder truck to the right side of the street to make sure that we're not going to have to short jack on the side that the ladder needs to be deployed on. So making sure that we're doing all the little things right up front makes a scene go very well. So if you know how to operate your apparatus, you know what the limitations and the needs of your apparatus are to work efficiently, very, very important. We talked about water supply, but how long can I use that tank water for? You know, where is my closest hydrant? Is it 30 feet away or 300 feet away? Because if it's 30 feet away, we can use our short section, right? We can position properly to grab that hydrant. Maybe that's going to be my priority, is to position myself to my best advantage on using the short section. If it's 300 or more feet away, you know, am I going to be able to establish that water supply by myself? You know, sure, some of us maybe can pull that by ourselves, but not all of us, and it's not going to be quick, I can tell you that much. So knowing, you know, is that hydrant, you know, 600 feet away? Because if it is 600 feet away and I need to use my master stream and a 2.5 and all this, you know, the friction loss through that LDH at 600 feet away is going to be so much that I'm going to be limited on what I can actually use on scene. And it might be beneficial to have a second engine actually supply that supply line. Again, not something I do a lot of, but as an FAO, I need to know the limitations of the lays and the LDH and the water supply that I have available to me. And then again, like we talked about, does this require a tender or a drafting? We always need to be thinking about, you know, is this that one scene that we just have to be ready for, where, you know, another truck is going to have to supply me? And it doesn't always have to be a house fire or anything like that. If it's a grass fire or a car fire or whatever that might be, and we're just not by a hydrant, do I need to get another truck started to refill me or ensure that I have enough water supply here to put the fire out? And it all comes back to just being an active part of the scene. So once that water is established, you have your water supply, crews are flowing water. Obviously, yes, the division and IC, they're probably going to be out in the front yard. They run the scene, but I like to think of that FAO as somebody that runs that front yard, you know, in the sense that you're the one that's running up equipment. You're the one that's seeing that, okay, they're switching over to doing some overhaul operations. I'm going to bring some tarps up. The less that we have to wait for things to be brought up, the less that we have to wait for a crew that's available to grab something, or maybe something was missed. If you can forecast these things and see what's needed, it's awesome, because that just allows things to go so much smoother. If you've already brought up the electrical cords and a fan to that front door, perfect, because if that's happened, now I can just flow into that next part of the scene. You know, what's needed next: lights, ventilations, ladders, what tools were missed, maybe a RIT bag wasn't thrown up there. You can go throw a RIT bag up at the front door. Whatever you need to do to make sure that that scene flows nice. I kind of see that FAO as somebody that ensures that the little things that are missed or the little things that are going to be needed, they're there to kind of address and make sure things roll really smooth. Also, we need to think about that FAO, you're going to be back at the street, and that initial command, let's say it's just that first arriving engine, if that company officer has to take the initial command, they're probably going to be up at that front door, or maybe they're even a working command and they're inside. You know, you as the FAO, you're on the outside. You're the one that sees things that other people aren't going to be seeing. You're further back than anyone else. So if something's not being seen or not being communicated, you kind of have to be those second set of eyes to let us know that, hey, you know, are you seeing what's going on with those roof vents and that smoke that's coming out of there? You're really going to be that second set of eyes, especially early on. Granted, you have a lot of roles to establish early on with lines being charged and water supplies being established and all those, but when you're given the opportunity to look at the building and see what's going on, always make sure you're kind of keeping an eye on that. And lastly, when an FAO is tracking the items that come off of the truck and ensuring that they get back on, I think that's a hugely important part that we kind of forget about. This isn't so much about the first 5 minutes, but if you're kind of keeping track of what's coming off in the first 5 minutes, as the scene unfolds, you're going to be able to ensure that those things get back on. If you're taking ownership of that truck and the equipment on it and the quality of the equipment as it comes back, you know, if it's dirty and you're pretty much saying, this is my truck, I own this, I'm not allowing this dirty pike pole to get on there, we need to clean it before it goes back on. It only helps our department and organization as we move forward. So kind of setting those standards and setting the ownership of making sure that items get replaced and they put back on and they're taken care of is going to make sure that it does trickle down. Everyone starts to see that, and everyone starts to be mindful of that. Like, okay, FAO so-and-so's on the truck, and make sure that we don't lose anything. And it happens, and we need to do a better job of ensuring that we're not losing things, and we are keeping better track of them. But as the FAO, you're kind of in that position that ensures you know what is off of your truck and what gets back on before we leave. So it's very important that that's being taken care of, just so we're not leaving things and having to replace them. All right, Bob, you want to talk about thoughts for company officers on what we require from them? What allows a scene to run real well if a company officer is dialed in? What tasks and roles are they going to have?
Well, initially, if they're on the first arriving engine, their tasks, their roles are to set up that initial attack and assign the duties of basically the first 3 arriving apparatus. So in most cases, the first couple engines and ladder, but those initial crews. So there's to size up the scene, give a good size up report, give the initial orders, get their crew deployed to do whatever is required. So if it's going to be an interior attack, making sure that their crew's getting the lines laid and know where they're going to do their search and rescue. Defensive, make sure that they make that very clear in that initial size up so that everybody knows on the way in, this is what's happening, we're outside right now, and so forth. And as you mentioned earlier too, whether or not it's a quick attack. So that size up's really important from that first arriving officer or first arriving piece of apparatus. You may not be an officer in that seat, but if you're in that seat, that's your role to do that, to try to paint that picture for everybody else. And then the hardest thing about that as a company officer is you're often a working command initially. And as part of that working command, it's tough because you're doing things, you're trying to get information, possibly do a 360, make sure your crew's getting the lines laid, giving orders to incoming units to get water supplies and so forth. It's probably one of the most difficult roles there is because, as a chief officer, when I'd roll up sitting in a my Tahoe, I had nothing. All I could do was a size up and get some information. When you're that company officer on that first arriving apparatus, you're working and you got a lot to handle. So it's a very, very tough position, but you got to think about, like Chad's been saying this whole time, the first 5 minutes really makes or breaks any scene. And if you get that set up and get it running properly and get folks assigned, it'll go much easier from that point forward. So I guess those are my expectations. Those would be my expectations as a chief officer, is to see that you're dealing with that initial first few minutes, getting things set up, getting the other units their assignments, and then from that point, probably hoping and praying that a chief shows up to take over for you.
I know I always was.
Yeah.
No,
That way they can do the report then too.
Exactly. I think you hit it on the head there. The company officers, you guys have on that first arriving truck, you have the hardest position, especially if you're that first arriving when you're on that truck. Like Bob said, if you're a chief, all you can do is the size up. All you can do is think about the incident action plan. All you can do is a 360 and kind of get some more information. But as a company officer, you have a crew to lead. You have tasks to ensure that they're getting done properly. You have a size up that needs to get done. You have a 360. So it's that working command that really starts to task that initial company officer. But the work that you put in and that first size up and those first orders and kind of managing those first couple crews are huge. Because if it goes poorly right off the bat, the whole scene is going to start to go poorly. So I think we absolutely hit it on the head. So yeah.
Forgot the division boss. You might get stuck in that position.
Exactly. So I threw that on there too, because you might get thrown at that. So, for company officers, I want you to think about, I might have to be that initial incident commander. We also have to think I might be that crew lead, and we forget that at the end of the day, my job is to run that crew that I'm assigned. I could also be a division boss, so I might have to be in charge of an entire division. Really, at the end of the day, though, it comes down to I need to be the one that maintains those communications. I'm the one that has the live mic. I'm the one that's in charge of that crew. Even if it's a division or crew or the incident commander, I have to maintain those. I have to hold on to those communications and ensure things are going the right way and that we're hearing the right things from the right people. I need to be using the right terminology, and I need to know the department operations. And I have to read and understand the situation to ensure that things are going the right way. So for that incident command, initially, obviously, size up is going to be one of the most important things. So doing that good size up, identifying what those initial actions are going to be, and figuring out what our strategy overall is going to be is hugely important, and that needs to happen right up front. Assuming that command as that first officer on scene needs to happen, so we all know somebody's in command of this and somebody's starting to lay this out. Completing a 360 and getting that report back is hugely important. So we've had it before where the first arriving crew gets on scene and they go through the front door and a 360 wasn't completed. Well, they didn't realize the whole back of the house was already on fire. So they're thinking that they're putting out a kitchen fire when really it was the whole exterior of the Charlie side is on fire, and we didn't use the proper tactics on that. So ensuring that a 360 is completed before we dedicate a line or before we allow a line to make entry is huge. Now, there are some scenes where we can tell that it's a very small fire and maybe that initial crew hits it through the front door or whatever while a 360 is being completed. But anytime that we're going to be putting a line interior, that 360 needs to ensure that it's done so we're not putting crews in harm's way. It also helps us identify any means of egress or entrance or what type of basement we have to deal with, or maybe there's some hazards that we don't realize are involved with this building. So anytime that we're doing an interior attack or anytime that we're on a structure fire, that 360 has to be done and we have to report back that it was completed. So for me, I always like to say, 2800 from SBM Command, be advised 360 is complete. We have this type of basement on the Charlie side, and maybe there's no hazards found, or maybe I found that there's a pool on the Charlie side, or that the exterior of the house is on fire on the Charlie side. Whatever that might be, we need to report those back so everyone's aware of the new situation. And we might have to redeploy that first initial crew that we had staged in the front yard. So adjusting and deploying crews appropriately to what we find as that scene unfolds. We always kind of say, that size up is very important and those initial actions are very important. Once I get on scene, I need to digest what I'm seeing. I need to see what the problem is, assign that crew to deal with it. But that whole time I need to be readjusting and re-identifying if I was completely right with that. So that's done with the 360. It's done with CAN reports. It's done with watching crews progress and ensuring that we're putting crews in the right place. So another thing that we need the incident commander to take control of is those CAN reports. And I have CAN P reports. And that's something that we need to kind of get back to is those continuous PARs that go with our CAN reports. So managing those CAN reports, getting those conditions, actions, needs from any groups that are inside of that structure, they're going to be hugely important because that gives information to the incident commander. We can't tell what the conditions are on the inside. We can't tell what actions you are completing, and we can't tell the needs that you have on the inside without you giving us that information. So having company officers that know how to give good CAN reports and having even good crew leads or firefighters that might be working in the company officer role, giving good CAN reports, followed up with a PAR is vastly important. So we've all heard the scenes where, dispatch comes across as your 15-minute PAR check. And for our scenes, we go ahead and say, okay, go ahead and reset the PAR clock. But if we haven't been getting those PAR checks on our cans, we really shouldn't be doing that. The whole idea is that we're doing those continuous PAR checks throughout the scene. So when dispatch gives us that 15-minute reminder, we know that we've already gotten our PAR reports back. That's just my 15-minute reminder to say, hey, 15 minutes has gone by. It might be time to rotate crews. It might be time to reevaluate where we're at. If we're not getting a good hit on this and crews are still interior, I need to start worrying about collapses or potentials for other hazards happening, or even a flash if it hasn't happened yet. So for us, if we're going to continue to do those resetting of the clocks without doing the full engine 1, do you have PAR? Engine 2, do you have PAR? Engine 3, do you have PAR? Those CAN reports have to be followed up with PARs. So if you're finding yourself as a incident commander or a division boss or even a crew lead, Anytime that you're giving a CAN report, make sure that we're following it up with PAR, and that we're not just saying it, that you actually are looking around and seeing that you do have your crew. And anytime that you're a division boss or incident commander and you're asking for those CAN reports, and if they didn't give you PAR, make sure you follow it up with, can you confirm that you have PAR? Copy that, Engine 3 has PAR. And that's just going to allow us to make sure that we maintain that continuous PAR check throughout the scene, and we're not waiting 15 minutes to see if somebody's missing or not. And lastly, they're just going to have to keep managing our resources and the tactical priorities. So that's really what our incident commander is doing, is making sure we have enough resources on scene and that the tactical priorities that we've set in our initial action plan are being met with the needed resources. When we're a crew lead for a company officer, your job is not to do the tasks. And that's hard for a lot of us, because even if we were maybe the lead firefighter for the day because we don't have a company officer, or maybe the company officer used to be, you know, the firefighter that did all the work, it's hard for us to not do work. We're doers, right? Every one of us wants to do, and a lot of us that get to the company officer level, we're ones that really enjoyed doing that work and we're really good at doing it. So when we find ourselves on these scenes, we want to kind of fall back into just doing the work and grabbing the hose line and grabbing the pike pole, or forcing the entry. But we're really not allowing that scene to unfold well in the first 5 minutes if we're the ones doing everything. Your job is to manage those tasks, ensure they're being done right and safely, and allowing the firefighters to work. Now, does that mean that we're never going to put our hand on a hose line? Does that mean we're never going to be completing a search? Does that mean, no, you are an active part of that crew. You're still a part of doing some of that work. But if you're taking the lead position on the nozzle, or if you're the one that's forcing entry on the door, you're not doing that crew any justice, and you're not allowing them to get the work done, and you're not allowing yourself to be a good manager of that crew. You're not allowing yourself to making sure that we're maintaining that crew integrity. So all the things I have listed below that is, you know, your job as that crew lead, you're there to maintain that crew integrity. You're there to make sure that everyone is sticking together and that we're all together and we didn't lose anyone. You're there to make sure that we're staying on task and working towards those tactical priorities. If somebody kind of all of a sudden thinks, well, you know, maybe I'm going to go grab gas and shut that off, or you know what, maybe I'm going to go check the upstairs to see how that goes, and you don't know what's going on, or they're kind of gotten away from your crew, that's a problem. My job as a company officer is to track that environment, track the conditions that we're seeing, and forecasting what's going to happen next. If I'm focused more in on fighting the fire and grabbing that nozzle and forcing entry, I'm not doing a good job of those things. And that's really where I see the breakdown sometimes on these scenes, is if my company officer is more focused on doing because maybe they have a crew that they don't trust, or they're really young and they're trying to help them out. That's really where we start to see some of these things take place, where maybe a crew member, you know, does something that they shouldn't be doing, or maybe they fall back further than they should because that company officer wasn't in the right position to ensure that they're all together and staying oriented. So anytime that you're a crew lead on the interior, you know, your job is kind of there to keep the orientation of that crew and maintain communications with your crew and the outside, either division or command. So monitoring that radio, making sure that you're listening in, that you're communicating back good CAN reports with PARs, communicating with your crew to making sure that they're all there together, and keeping orientation. So, you know, having that tick, or just, you know, making sure that you're hearing good communication with your crew and knowing where the hose line is and where the stairwell was and where the closest window might be and what room that you're in and what portion of the building that you're in. You know, that's really your job. If your firefighters can focus on getting that search done, and your firefighters can focus on advancing that hose line, and you can kind of just overall know where your orientation is and know where those communications are getting back out to the crew, and know that your tasks are getting completed, things flow so much better. So just a reminder, anytime that we're a crew lead, I'm not saying don't do anything and sit there and watch your crews. I am saying allow your crews to work. You know, get your hands off of some of the things that, you know, we need our tasks doers to do. You know, and that might be hard, especially if we have light crews. You know, if you got a crew of two, you know, you and one firefighter, guess what? You're probably going to be doing some of these things. But any opportunity that we get to make sure that we can fill that company officer role, make sure that we're being good crew leads, we should be doing that and allowing our firefighters to get the tasks done. Because if we all do our job, things go smooth. You might be assigned to a division boss, and that's really where we're gonna have to manage and track any of the crews that were assigned. So if you're on Alpha, you might have 2, 3 crews that you're assigned. Maybe 1 or 2 are interior, maybe one's with you on the outside on deck. So we need to make sure that we're have the right resources that are needed to fulfill the tasks that we need to get done. So we're really assigning crews to those tactical objectives. We're getting the primary search complete. We're getting the fire under control. We're getting the ventilation set up. We're getting those things. So that's really your mindset is, what are my tactical objectives and what crews do I have assigned to get them done? Checking in with those crews to making sure that those tactical objectives get completed, so I can go back to command and let command know this is done. We're ready to move on to the next tactical objective. Really making sure that we're overseeing on-deck crews. An on-deck crew, it's very easy for us to get complacent on deck. I think, I'm not trying to call any of us out, but I think we all kind of fall into that. On deck is just the next crew that goes in, right? Which that shouldn't be the case. That on-deck crew needs to be an active part of that scene. We need to be prepared to rescue, reinforce, or replace the crews that are assigned interior, right? So if things go south, I need to be ready to deploy at a moment's notice. I'm not just sitting around waiting for that crew to be done with whatever they're doing so then I can go in and take over for them. I need to be ready to go back them up if they need a backup line. I need to be ready to go be activated as a RIT team if they have a mayday. I need to be ready for anything that could happen because I'm the next crew up. So really make sure that we're not just coming up to on deck and expect to use the tools and the hose line and the things that have already been established up there. Make sure that we have the tools and things that are needed to accomplish a RIT, to accomplish a mayday or RIT activation, to accomplish a backup. Because a lot of times I see a crew come up, well, I'm on deck. So I'm like, okay, where's your axe and your Halligan and all this? Well, I'll just use their axe and a Halligan. Well, that doesn't really help us if a mayday comes in. Your job is to come up prepared, ready to even go in without any of the tools that the first crew has, because that first crew is already using them. Your job is to come up prepared and ready to go. Our job for on deck is to establish that secondary means of egress. Make sure that we have a ground ladder thrown to upper levels. Make sure that we're monitoring the safety conditions from the exterior. So we're really kind of being that active RIT team. And that's being established with that on-deck crew. So make sure that we're not just being complacent, we're not just sitting back and waiting, we're being an active part of that. We're making sure that secondary egress is established, that we're kind of getting a peek around the corners of the house to make sure that we know the layout and know the conditions and know what's going on, so we're ready to respond if something does come up. So again, how we maintain those communications is going to be important for company officers. A lot of time that's going to be face-to-face. It's going to be over the radio, and sometimes it's just going to be talking to your crew when you're inside. So we might have to do a face-to-face with the division boss. We might have to talk to command over the radio, but making sure that we're controlling the communications with our crew as well. If we're having somebody that's talking too loud or getting too amped up, and kind of getting them to calm back down is very important, because if we allow our crew to get too amped up and start screaming, we're going to lose control of that communications inside, and then we're really going to start to lose control of the tasks that we're completing. So really making sure that you're owning it, and not just having a radio and only responding when you're called, but also listening in to see what other crews are doing. If you can hear that division say that they're going to be starting up ventilation, or you can hear them say that they're going to have another crew establish a secondary means of egress, the more that you're dialed in, and the more that you're listening to that radio, you're going to have so much more awareness of what's going on from the interior and what's also happening on the exterior. So what happens with other crews and what they're doing does affect you and your capabilities on the interior. So the more that we're dialed into that is going to be very important. Where we lose that communications process for a company officer is generally when they have to start doing tasks, right? So if I'm the company officer and I grab the nozzle and I start spraying the fire, or if I grab an axe and start trying to force a door and whatever else, we start to get overloaded, or sensory overload kicks in, and I'm not going to be able to track and listen to that radio as well. And that's really where things start to get lost. If we're losing that that communications process, we're really losing the overall awareness that we should be having as a company officer. So making sure that we're maintaining those communications is very, very important. Using the right terminology and operations on scene is also very important. So I have small, medium, and large written on there because that's part of our size up process, right? So if we're told that it's a small building, that means something, right? It's not just small because I think it looks small compared to what I would usually consider a house, right? It's not just medium because I think it's very average. It's not large because I think it's bigger than the typical house. Small means I can get a pre-connect 100% through that building, which I got to tell you, about 99% of the houses in our fire district are small. Medium means I can get a pre-connect through 75% of a building. Large means I can get a pre-connect 50% through a building. Very large means it's 25% or less. So when we start to just use what we feel is normal or feel fits our description and what we're used to, it loses its definition. You know, we need to make sure that we're using small appropriately. If it's a small house, which again, 99% of the houses that we have in our district are small, then we know that that definition of that small means I can get my pre-connect all the way through that house. If I'm sizing it up and I believe I might not be able to get my pre-connect all the way through, I might say it's a small to medium or even just a straight medium house. And that should start telling people, all right, if I pull my pre-connect, there might be parts of this house that I'm not going to be able to reach. If we just use it because I think it's a little bit bigger than the typical house, well, then it loses its definition, it loses its meanings to anybody else, and we might as well just not even say it. So be mindful, when we use words in our terminology, it means something, and if we lose those definitions, then we've really lost meaning to what we're saying. Everything that we say should have a purpose and a meaning to what we're saying. On deck. On deck means I am on the front door or the point of entry, so it doesn't always have to be the front door. Maybe on deck is on Charlie at a rear door or whatever that might be. On deck means that I am at that door ready to do those tasks like we had just talked about. You know, I need to be ready to rescue, reinforce, or replace that crew. I've got my own tools, I've got my own hose line, I've got my own items and materials that are needed to complete that. I am the RIT team. I am the one that needs to establish a ground ladder to any upper level windows and whatever else might need to happen. So that on deck means something. It doesn't just mean that we're just going to sit up here and wait. If I use backup, backup has meaning. If you're told that you're a backup crew, that's an interior crew. So engine 1 might be assigned to go to the second level for a fire attack, you know, especially if we're looking at this fire on the top right here. You know, engine 1, I need you to make entry for second floor for fire attack. And then engine 5, you guys get on scene. Engine 5, I need you to back up engine 1. You know, that means something. It doesn't mean that you're going to go on deck. It doesn't mean that you just need to help engine 1. It means that you're going to bring a line in and protect their egress. So when we use backup to mean on deck, again, we're losing the definition, and we might as well not even say it. So make sure that when we use these terminology, we use specific words, they have meaning, and we can't lose that meaning. I have interior written on here. So a lot of times we hear interior crew from command, you know, and that's not our terminology. We don't use interior crew, right? Because if we use interior crew, we've lost what crew actually is inside. Granted, we have par boards, we should be checking that, and we should know. But at the end of the day, we as a department and organization said, we're going to call crews what they are. Engine 3 is always engine 3. Engine 3 doesn't become interior unless I say that there's going to be an interior group and these apparatus are assigned to that interior group, right? So we always call a crew what they are unless they are assigned something else. So if Chief 5 arrives on scene, he's Chief 5 unless I assign him Alpha Division. Once he's been assigned Alpha Division, he is now Alpha. Engine 3, you are Engine 3 unless you are assigned a different title. So we don't ever assign, we rarely assign other titles than what you are. And if we are, it needs to be very intentional and it needs to be well known that you are assigned that. So one time that might happen is if you have like a crew of 6 on a truck, we might split it. So you might be Engine 5A and Engine 5B, or Engine 5 interior and Engine 5 exterior. but that would be established and known through whoever is going to be splitting that crew. And it's going to be told to you, you are this crew and you are this crew. So again, we can maintain that crew integrity and our par checks properly while we're on scene. A peek out, lookout, and a walkout, those are all very specific types of basements. So I like to look as a peek out, I'll kind of joke I'm short. So if I had to look through a peek out basement, I'd have to peek out through my tiptoes. I have to get on my tiptoes to peek out of a peek out basement. And that's going to be more of that picture on the bottom there. More typical that you would see on a Rambler type of a building. That you're going to have those small windows. They're not really egress windows. They're just there for kind of light, and those maybe a foot and a half tall window. That's a peek out style basement. That means something. A lookout means that I have the full size windows on a basement, but I don't have a door it doesn't meet at ground level on that back side. So a lookout has full size windows, which means I've got a full window for egress if I needed to, which it's a little bit safer of a basement to work out of, but I don't necessarily have that sliding door or a door to walk in or out of. And lastly, the walkout basement, obviously that means I've got the ability to walk in and out of that basement. And that's generally going to be say, hey, I have a walkout basement on the Charlie side, which means I've got the patio door or just a regular service door on the Charlie side of that basement. And again, all of those things mean something, because when I hear peek out, I should be thinking as a crew, if I have a basement fire in a peek out basement, I've got limited access. It's going to be, that's one of those that we need to really be cautious about what we're getting into. No, we should never not be cautious, but at the same time, if I have a walkout, I can kind of take a little bit of a breath, because I know I can attack that from whatever side that walkout's on, and I have egress easily in and out of that. A lookout, I kind of feel a little bit better, because I know I've got full-size windows that I can get in and out of if need be to that basement. But if I have a peek out, that means I've got very limited in and out. You could tell a firefighter would have a hard time trying to get in and out of a peek out window. So let's make sure that we use the right terminology. We know what terminology is out there. Does anybody else have anything other terminology that they can think of that I'm not talking about right now?
Chad, I guess I don't recall hearing peek out, but I would call that first one, that to me, that's a typical, we have a basement.
Sure. Okay. Yep.
That's a true basement versus the lookout, which has, it's windows are at grade level, or your walkout.
Sure.
I mean, like you said, good chunk of the Ramblers in all three cities are that type of a basement, where you've got a couple small windows like that.
Yep. More of that standard basement that we're used to seeing, right? That's, yep. I would agree with that. And I guess another one that I didn't talk about is maybe like a slab on grade where we don't have a basement, and that's important to know too, because then I don't have to worry about anything below me.
And we've got a lot of those when it comes to like our townhouses and stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely. There's more than we're used to, because we used to not really have too many of those slab on grades, and now we're seeing a little bit more of them.
Yep.
One thing that was brought up is last night, you might hear some different terminology when we're on mutual aid scenes. Backup on a mutual aid scene might really actually mean on deck. So I can't really prep you for everything that you're going to hear and say. I can just tell you, if you're on our scene, backup means an interior position. On deck means an exterior position. But if we have to go to a mutual aid to another city, we might require a little bit of clarification as far as what we're hearing. So I do know some other departments use backup in the sense that you're going to the door and you're waiting to go in, more of an on-deck type of a position. So that is kind of the curveball to all of this, is once we're on a different scene, we kind of have to be able to adapt to their terminology and ensure that we're on the same page.
One more thing on that basement.
Yeah.
There are some crawl spaces in some of these townhomes that
Yes.
You might think it's a slab on grade, and all of a sudden you start going through, you might be freaking out. So you remember, there are some crawl spaces, and if we ever come across them, we should probably maybe let the crews know that, because the floor can give out on those, and you're not going to fall far, but it can scare the hell out of you.
Well, and absolutely, and especially if we realize that there's a crawl space and maybe that fire has gotten into that crawl space, that's a different type of fire to fight now, right? So that's a great point. And sometimes we need to be those interior crews, and that goes back to maintaining that good communication from a company officer or a good crew lead or whatever on the interior, given that can report back, you know, if we didn't identify it from the exterior and we didn't say that there's a crawl space, but you know, they've got a crawl space fire, that should be changing our tactics and our mindset for what we're doing, right? So that's a great point. So again, kind of that company officer, we need to be reading and understanding the situation. So that comes with experience, it comes with training, it comes with knowing, you know, our position well. When should these conditions be changing, you know, and how should they be changing? And when do we need to change our tactics or strategy to get them to change properly? So, you know, one of the things I think about is, you know, those two pictures on the bottom, you know, that's kind of scene one, and then a couple seconds later, you got scene two. That environment wants to change. I've got good thermal layering. I've got, you know, good black smoke above me. But a good company officer should know if I'm not having an effect on that fire, or if I'm not able to reach that fire and I am getting hot, and I still haven't been able to get a good knock on that fire, it's going to get to that next stage. It's going to roll over. It's going to flash. So as company officers, we need to understand if we're not getting the results that we should be seeing, we need to know when it's time to change what we're doing, right? It's from an exterior point of view, if all I see is some smoke coming out of a window and I put you interior, you know, I'm not going to have the same ideas and knowledge as what you have in there. So it's having those good CAN reports, that good mindset for saying, you know, I know that division sent me in here for an interior attack, but you know, I've made the attack that I could, that I feel comfortable doing, and the environment's not changing and we're not having the desired effect. I'm going to get my crew in trouble if I stay in here too much longer. So knowing that if that scene on the left, if I, you know, charge 1 3/4 inches and spray that environment, you know, and cool it down up high, I should feel that environment get better. I should see those flames retreat. I should see some disruption in that thermal layering. But if it's not happening and it's not changing as it should, you're going to have the other picture there, and things are not going to be good. And that's not an environment that we want to be in. It's the same with the picture on the top. You know, you might be told to do a quick hit on that, but if you you spray your line for a good 10 seconds and that fire doesn't change, it doesn't mean you drop to your knees and make entry. You know, we need to know if it's not having the effect that it should have, we're going to have to change our tactics on this and maybe deploy differently. So always be in a mindset that, yes, I was given orders, yes, I have an IAP to work under, but you know, as a company officer or that crew lead, you know, we really expect you to know if things aren't progressing as they should. You know, we expect you to be able to make those changes, and we really do give you the authority to kind of make some of those decisions from the interior, as we need to change what we're doing. You need to get back to your division or your command and let them know, hey, not having the desired effect, we're pulling out, or you know, we need another crew in here, or whatever that might be, to really start getting ahead of things. Just because we have a bad plan doesn't mean we need to keep pushing down it. So really, when we put it all together, the firefighter, the FAO, and that company officer, if we're all doing our jobs and we're all being forecasters and we're all understanding the sequence of events that need to take place on a fire scene, you know, things really start to go smoothly. You know, if we know the jobs of a first arriving crew, you know, and maybe you're en route and you start thinking, okay, I'm going to be the second arriving crew or a third arriving crew, and start to talk about what those jobs are going to be. Maybe talking about, all right, we're probably going to have to establish a water supply, or we're going to be going on deck. Let's make sure that we get some good tools. It sounds like it's an attic fire. Let's grab some pike poles. You know, getting ahead of things and thinking as what a crew should be doing for a second or a third arriving crew, that's going to be very valuable to allowing that scene to just flow smoothly. When we all work together, things go well. And we also need to know when the scene is not coming together, you know, we need to know that something needs to change. You know, we need to kind of take that step back and reevaluate what's going on. A lot of this was talking about that first 5 minutes. If we're taking care of things in those first 5 minutes, that handoff to that next arriving chief should be a very smooth, we're getting a hold of things and things are going in the right direction. So we really want to tell that next arriving chief, hey, this is what I had when we got here. This is how things are right now. This is where engine 1, engine 2, engine 3, and engine 4 are. And this is what they're doing, and command is yours, and maybe you're going to be placed as a division or whatever that might be. But having that good handoff only happens if we've done the right things up front. You know that you're going to be on one of those scenes where things did not go right, and you arrive as that chief or that next arriving company officer that has to take it because maybe the first one went as a working command as an interior. You're going to be able to tell when things did not go well, and now it's going to be your job to try to fix the tangled mess that was created in those first 5 minutes. So making sure that we take the time to do it right up front, making sure that we take the time to train and practice and get on the same page before a scene even happens, they all have lasting effects, and they all really do matter. I think it's important for us to remember we're not doing this for us. We all love being firefighters. We all love, a little bit of the adrenaline that comes with what we do. We all love, that feeling of importance and all the other things that come with it. But at the end of the day, we're not doing this for us. It's for those homeowners that are watching their houses burn, that are watching their families go through a very difficult thing, that are watching their pets suffer. We need to be dialed in. We need to be doing the right things. We need to be on top of our game for them. It's for our community. It's for each other, so we can make sure that we're keeping each other safe and being able to do our jobs well. And it really is all about everything else. It's not about us. If we're showing up just because we want that adrenaline rush, or we're just showing up and hopefully somebody's going to tell me what to do once I get there, we're not doing anybody any favors. We're not doing our crews favors. We're not doing our community any favors. Our department expects more out of us than just showing up. So, what I can tell you is just know your job, stay calm, and get everything to flow and run smooth. If we can get everything dialed in before a scene even happens, things go very well, and our community is going to be very grateful for what we're able to do. So this isn't to say that we're doing a bad thing. It's just a reminder. Today is really just a reminder on how do we ensure that we're doing a really good thing, and really kind of putting some of these things back at the forefront on how we get there. So that's really what I have. Next week, like I said, I'm going to work with Bob, make sure we got a couple addresses for you guys to go to. We're going to have you guys work on some deployment. So this is our time to really develop those good habits. And I think we have a lot of good habits, especially during the day here. But it's really time to make sure that we're getting off the truck ready, dialed in, with good communication, good understanding for what's expected, getting a good hose line flake out, and getting good size ups, good initial orders, all those things. I don't want these to be fast scenarios. If you guys only get through one scenario and have really good conversation and really good development on procedures and how things should be working and kind of that good aha moment, then I'm very happy. It shouldn't be about how fast I can get a hose line deployed. It should be about how well I can get a hose line deployed and how well I can do a size up and how well we can talk about what needs to happen for a first arriving, second arriving, third arriving truck here. So next week that's really going to be the focus is getting out in our communities, getting some good size ups, knowing our jobs really well, and making sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. So that's what I have. Does anybody have anything else for this? Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for your participation today. I hope everyone has a good day. I know it's, National Voting Day, so make sure you get out there and get your votes in. But that's about all I got. So thank you and have a good day.